Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a fun little video. I've actually been wanting to do this video for a while, but I was just recently able to finally get everything together. What we're going to be doing is comparing a Urban Decay palette with a Dupe palette. Story time. About a year ago, before I was really into makeup, I was looking for an eyeshadow. I needed a green eyeshadow for a costume. I'm a costumer, cosplayer, and I needed a green eyeshadow for a makeup look that I was doing for a particular costume. And I was in Burlington Coat Factory with my family, and I came across this palette. It was like $6.99. It had this really beautiful green shade in it that I really liked, so I went ahead and I grabbed it. The formula was okay. You know, back then, this is before I knew anything about eyeshadow or formulas. I didn't know what a good formula was supposed to be, so, I don't know what I was really doing back then. But, thinking about the shadows that I added to my collection recently, it was a pretty decent shadow. Not the best, but not bad. Fast forward, I'm into makeup. I'm wanting to get an Urban Decay palette, but I'm new to makeup, so I don't know what to get. So I asked some of my friends on Facebook and Instagram, what's a good Urban Decay palette to begin with? And a lot of them were recommending the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. So I look it up, and I'm looking at the pictures of the color story, and I'm thinking, where have I seen this before? Why does this look so familiar? And then I realized it's because the color story was identical to that palette that I had picked up from Burlington like 4 or 5 months ago. That was $6.99. By this time, I've already passed the palette on to my daughter. I started getting and collecting, better eyeshadow, better makeup, and I thought this would be fun for her to play around with. She's only 15, she's just now starting to get into makeup. But I thought it'd be fun just to kind of take the two palettes, compare and contrast, compare the formulas, compare the shades, see what they look like on the skin, and then after that, go ahead and put together an eye look. So we'll do like the Urban Decay on one eye, and then we'll do the other palette on the other eye. First of all, we have the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. This is an OG palette. This has been around for a while. I have been wanting to get this. I just recently got it, because I started getting other makeup and other palettes that were coming out, and I just hadn't had a chance to grab this one, but I went ahead and I picked this one up. As you can see on the palette, this is basically a traveling theme. They have pictures on here of different sites from around the world. This packaging is pretty heavy. It's not cardboard. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty sturdy. I like that. And now we have the Dupe palette. Now, when you look at the outer packaging, you can see it's different. The Urban Decay Born to Run palette has pictures of sites from around the world, like we said. The Around the World palette just has a collage of flags and stuff from different countries. It's a lot lighter. It's a little cheaper. There was actually a little hanging plastic here, so and hung up. So yeah, it's cheap. It's not the same quality as far as the packaging goes. Also, this one is a little bit smaller. As you can see, the sizing is not quite the same, so this packaging is a little bit smaller as well. Now for the fun part. What does it look like on the inside? This is the Urban Decay Born to Run palette, and this is the Around the World. As you can see, they're basically identical. They made the outer packaging on the Around the World one different, but as you can see, they didn't do anything to try to hide the color story on the inside. It's exactly the same. I thought that was so funny. Like I said, it wasn't until I went to look this palette up, because it had been recommended to me, that I realized it was the same color story as this one, and that this one was supposed to be a dupe of this one. Let's go ahead and do some swatches of some different shades and kind of see what they look like, if they're the same. The Urban Decay palette, there's actual names on the shades, but in the Around the World palette, there aren't any. Let's see, what do we want to swatch? I want to swatch some of the kind of the brighter shades, and then maybe a couple of deeper ones. So let's swatch. This one is called Wild Heart. That's this deep purple shade or brighter purple pinkish shade in the Urban Decay. Let's see what that one looks like. Okay, so that is the Urban Decay shade. Now, in the Around the World shade, this one up here is its corresponding shade. Like I said, there are no shade names in this one. It feels kind of creamy. It doesn't feel too bad. That's how they look on the fingers. This is the Urban Decay one, and this is the Around the World. So we're going to take this one and put it there. As you can see, they both are they're both shimmery. I mean, they're not bad. They're pretty. The Urban Decay one is a little bit lighter, a little more pink, a little more iridescent. The Around the World one is a little bit darker, but comparison-wise with that first shade, it's not too bad. Let's do this shade here. The shade is called Stranded. It's kind of a gold, shimmery champagne kind of look, or shade rather. So we're going to put the Urban Decay on the top. Very creamy, fairy glass-like. All right, now let's compare that same shade or the similar shade in the Around the World palette. And that shade is that this one? This one right here. Okay, got a little backwards there. Like I said, in the palette, you know, they're not bad. They're kind of creamy. That's the comparisons on the finger there. And then this one is the Around the World. It's actually really pretty. The Around the World one is darker, more gold, and it's not as wet looking as the Urban Decay, but comparison wise, once again, not too bad. Let's go ahead and we'll swatch a couple more shades. Let's take this Wanderlust shade. In the Around the World palette, it was this green shade right here, the equivalent of it in that palette. That was the reason that I kind of wanted it. But this one is called Wanderlust, and this is the Urban Decay palette. Very pretty shimmery green. Now in the Around the World palette, it's this shade. This is smooth, it's creamy, it's not too bad. We're going to put that right underneath. I have to say, if you look close, the Around the World shade's a little darker. This one is more emerald green. But as far as how they look in a swatch, it's not too bad. I mean, there's obviously a difference in the shade. It's not quite the same, and this one's a little more shimmery, a little more smooth, but formula-wise and how it actually felt doing the swatches, not bad at all. All right, let's do one more shade. We're going to do this one right here. This is kind of a blue turquoisey shimmer shade, and that one is called Big Sky. This is the Urban Decay palette. Once again, Urban Decay on the top. And then we're going to put the Around the World palette on the bottom. And the equivalent is this shade down here. And we're going to put that underneath. All right. This one looks like it's a little more blue. It's not as shiny and smooth and wet looking as the Urban Decay shade. It's a little bit different, but going on, it actually, I mean, as you saw, it went on pretty smooth. I didn't really have a whole lot of problem with it. But so far, guys, I can't say that I'm unhappy about the quality in the Dupe palette. So far, guys, looking at the swatches and how they swatched on my hand, I am not seeing that much of a difference. Shade-wise, there's a little bit of difference. Formula-wise, not a huge difference from what I can see. The Urban Decay palette was $49. The Around the World palette was $6.99, like I said earlier in the video. I'm going to go ahead and pull you guys in closer, and let's go ahead and put together and look and see how they perform in the eyelids. Pulled you guys in a little bit closer. Let's go ahead and put together an eye look. What I tried to do for this was either pull, doubles of brushes that I had, so that way there would be the same brush used on each side, or a brush similar, so that way we can try to get close to the same performance as possible. Now the question is, what look do we want to put together? I know I don't want to do anything wild and crazy. The whole point of this segment is just to compare the formulas and see how they perform in the eyelids. But I do want to do this green, since the green shade in the Around the World palette was the shade that caught my attention to that palette. I think I do want to compare those on the eyelid. I think I want to do these two mattes and then maybe bring in this green shade, and then I might bring in this gold. But let's go ahead and start with this matte. That one is Still Shot in this palette. So I'm going to put this one on the right eye, and then we'll do the Around the World palette on the left. Taking my Chic Pro brush, and we're going to dip into this Still Shot shade, lay that down on the right eye. That is from the Urban Decay palette. So we're just going to lay that on the eye. And I haven't primed my eyelids or anything. I just kind of want to see how they perform straight on the eyelids. Y'all, I am loving how my face and my skin is looking today. I'm trying out a mattifying powder from Essence, and it looks so beautiful on the skin. So far, I'm highly impressed. All right, so this is the Still Shot shade. Went on very smooth, no effort whatsoever. Looks very, very pretty. Now in the Around the World palette, we're going to take this shade right here, which is the equivalent, and we're going to lay that over the left eyelid. All right, it's not going on as smooth, but it's not going on horribly either. The shade is a little darker and a little more pigmented, so you can see the difference. This is the Urban Decay. This is the Around the World. All right, but so far, we can see that the Around the World is way more pigmented. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It's not going on as smooth, but it's definitely more opaque. I've changed my mind. Instead of doing this one, I want to do this one, this kind of rich terracotta shade, so I can see how that one looks in the eyelid. That one is called Baja, so we're going to go ahead and lay that down. I've got my Chic Pro Crease eyeshadow brush. Get just a little bit of that Baja shade on my brush. This is the Urban Decay. Lay it right on top of that last shade. Just going on smooth. Feels really nice on the eyelid. The shade is a little more pigmented, which makes sense. You know, it's a deeper shade. Oh, that is so pretty. Gorgeous terracotta orange, my word. And also note, this is the first time I've actually used this Born to Run palette. I've never actually pulled it out and done an eye look with it before. That's laying down really nice. I have an identical Chic Pro brush here. We're gonna go into this shade, which is the comparison shade in the Around the World palette. And we're gonna lay that in the crease on the left eye. See how it compares. Well, I can already tell you guys, the shadow is going on very, very nice. I'm not really having much trouble at all with this Around the World palette. I actually have not used this palette since I gave it to my daughter, so it's been a few months, but I don't know, I'm kind of impressed. All right, so what do you think? This one is definitely a little more pigmented. This one, though, is a little bit more orange. This one's a little more brown. Now we're going to go into the Green Wonderlust shade in the Urban Decay palette. The one thing I'm noticing just right away is just how much more pigmented the Around the World palette is. And that does not actually mean anything. I mean, that doesn't mean that it's a better palette. It's just something that I'm making note of. Let's lay this Wonderlust shade just down right in the middle of the eyelid. Okay, this shade is going on a little more patchy in the Urban Decay palette. I'm not quite thrilled with how that's going on. And it definitely doesn't have the same shimmer on the eyelid that it has in the palette. Okay, but that's the Urban Decay one. Now let's go on ahead and do the comparison shade in the Around the World palette. And that would be this one over here. Take a little bit on this brush. This one is my Japanese brush. This is very similar to the BH Cosmetics brush that I use in the other eye. This one, I can already tell it's a little bit more chunky, but let's see how it looks on the eye. A little more chunky, a little more fallout, but the shade is a little more vibrant. Is it going on a little smoother? I can't really tell. I think it's still a little patchy, but I will say that just from the brush, this one is a little more vibrant. There looks like there's more glitter or something in this one, so it looks shinier. Maybe flecks of gold that I'm not seeing in the shade in the Urban Decay palette. Not bad. It's also a little bit darker. It's a little more pigmented. All right, let's do one more shade, and we're going to take the Stranded shade, which is the gold shade right there, and we're going to use that as an inner corner highlight. Very smooth, metallic. No complaints there. This is the Urban Decay one, by the way. All right, let's take the comparison shade in the Around the World palette, which is this one right there, and we're going to lay that in the inner corner in the other eye. This one is shinier. It's a little bit more gold. Definitely a little bit more shine to it than the Urban Decay palette. And that is the look done on both eyes. This is the Urban Decay, and this is the Around the World. I'm going to throw on some liner. I'm not going to do lashes today. I'm just going to do a couple of coats of mascara, but we're going to do that, and we'll come back and we'll talk about what we thought about everything. Now for some final thoughts. Formula-wise, I didn't see a huge difference between the two palettes. The Urban Decay palette was a little bit smoother. The metallics in this palette were a little more icy, but I did notice that in the Around the World palette, this gold shade right here was more vibrant and more shiny on the eye than the shade in the Urban Decay palette. As far as the green shade, the reason that I got this palette in the first place, I have to say I like the one in this one just a little bit better. This one, I felt like it was harder to build up. It didn't have as much of the shimmer and the shine as this one did. There was some really pretty kind of flecks of gold. You don't see it in the palette, but on the eyelid, it's just really, really pretty. Price-wise, like I said, this one is $49. This one is $6.99. I was not out looking for a Born to Run dupe. Like I said, I just happened to realize that I had this palette and the color store was identical to this one. But I will say that if you were looking for a dupe, this one is pretty darn good. It has been a while since I pulled this palette out, but I may have to play with it a little bit more and do some more kind of comparisons, because I have to say I was very, very impressed. And that is the end of the video. I hope you guys had fun. If I can find that Around the World palette somewhere, I'll link it down in the description box. Like I said, it was a random palette that I found at Burlington, so I might not be able to find it, but if I can, I will definitely link it. If you're new to my channel, I would love if you join my little family, hit subscribe, and also make sure to tap the notification bell so you'll be notified of future videos. Be safe, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.